My name is Lauren. I'm a 36-year-old woman working from home. My husband, Daniel, and I got married 3 years ago. At that time, we were both 33 and wanted to have children, so we decided to see a doctor considering fertility treatments. The results showed no issues, which was a relief, but despite waiting patiently, we had no luck conceiving a baby. As we were about to give up, Daniel said, "But my mom insists we must have a successor." I sighed at his confused words. Daniel is generally a good husband, but he has a tendency to be a bit of a mama's boy and always agrees with whatever his mother says. I don't particularly like my mother-in-law. Daniel is the eldest son and has a younger sister, but my mother-in-law adores Daniel, practicing favoritism to an extreme. His sister didn't like this, so she left home early. Daniel's job involves a lot of transfers, but when we got married, he was working near his parents' home. When we were getting married, he warned me that he might get transferred, but I felt as long as we were together, I could live anywhere. However, when we rented a house near his parents' home, my mother-in-law would often come over to our house on Daniel's days off, and even while I was working from home, she would find excuses to drop by and interfere with my work, criticizing my way of doing laundry or cleaning. It's downright annoying. Additionally, every time we meet, she would ask about having a grandchild. Of course, it has to be a boy. We don't need a girl. Her presence stresses me out. I tried explaining the situation to Daniel and asked him to talk to his mother, but no matter how many times I tell him, all he says is, "My mom just wants to get along with you, Lauren," which is overly optimistic. It's not helpful to stress out someone you're trying to get along with. Originally, I was drawn to Daniel because of his optimistic character, a trait I lack in, and I felt that we balanced each other out in many areas, but we can't bridge this gap. However, 6 months ago, Daniel's job transfer was finalized and we were finally able to move away from his parents' house. Our new place is farther away from my parents' home. Although there are only farm fields around my parents' house, Daniel's new workplace is in a relatively prosperous area, similar to a regional city in Nebraska, with well-developed public transportation and infrastructure. Moreover, it takes less than an hour away from my parents' home by car. Once we moved, my stress was almost gone. I could concentrate on my work and our life became comfortable. Then, just the other day, I found out I was pregnant. Daniel and I hugged each other in joy. Being of advanced age, I do have some concerns, but this is the pregnancy we've been longing for. When we told his parents, my mother-in-law's first words were, "It's a boy, right?" Even when Daniel said we didn't know the gender yet, she insisted it had to be a boy. However, the baby turned out to be a girl. When my mother-in-law found out, she called me when Daniel was not around and said, "You're really useless. What did you marry into this family for?" Whether it was because of hormonal imbalances or I was emotionally unstable, I broke down crying. When Daniel came home and saw me crying, he got mad when I told him what happened and yelled, "Are you saying my mom is in the wrong?" And I ended up crying even more. Regardless, Daniel still cares for my health and helps me with the household chores, so he's a good husband as long as my mother-in-law isn't involved. So, I was able to deliver the baby safely. I came back home a month after giving birth in my hometown. Daniel came to pick me up. I got into his car and we headed to back home after a long while. Surprisingly, my mother-in-law was there. I didn't expect her to come to see her granddaughter, but she came anyway. I had a bad feeling about this. Yet, Daniel was oblivious and cheerfully said, "My mom came to help." And then, while my husband was in another room soothing our daughter, my mother-in-law pulled out a box of cake from the refrigerator. "This is to celebrate your childbirth. I'm sure you didn't get to enjoy any good food while you were out in the countryside for your postnatal recovery, did you?" I was annoyed by the way she said it, but tried to let it slide. "This cake costs $500, she exclaimed, handing me the box. $500? I was taken aback. I had never heard of such a pricey cake before. Nodding, my mother-in-law urged me to open it. I was curious to see what a $500 cake would look like. Excited, I placed the box on the table and opened it. But I was slightly disturbed by the smug look on my mother-in-law's face. The cake that came out of the box was not what you would expect for $500. The whipped cream was dried out, and while there were fruits on top, they were clearly canned oranges. I wondered which bakery would sell such a shoddy cake for $500. I love sweets, and I can enjoy any cake regardless of its price. Yet, this was the first time I felt such disappointment the moment I opened a cake box. However, the story with my mother-in-law's cake didn't end there. I couldn't believe my eyes. As I looked up from the cake, there she was grinning. "So, how's the $500 cake?" she asked. At that point, I lost my temper and threw the cake, box and all, into the trash. "Please leave," I shouted. Surprised by my outburst, my husband rushed into the living room. Before I could say anything, my mother-in-law started crying to my husband. "Lauren is being so mean." Then she pointed at the trash can. My husband looked at it and became furious. "You, what the hell have you done? That was a cake my mom went through all the trouble to make." As I lost the opportunity to mention the supposed $500 cake, my mother-in-law chimed in. "Yes, that's right. I made that cake for you, so it's worth $500. "Ah, so that's what it was. Of course there's no way such a cake would cost $500. Even at $50, no, even at $5, I wouldn't buy it." Everything finally made sense. There's no way any bakery would approve such a disrespectful cake. As I was processing the situation, my husband yelled out, "Lauren, apologize to Mom." It seems my husband is always on my mother-in-law's side no matter what. As I was standing there in shock, I heard our daughter, who I thought was put to sleep, crying, so I rushed to her. There was some commotion on the other side of the door, but right now, my daughter was my priority. When I finally got her to settle down and return to the living room, I found a note saying that they had gone out to eat and that I should reflect on my actions. I was stunned. I wondered if I could return to live here with my husband, but I didn't know if it would be right to run crying to my parents, but I had nowhere else to go. As I was thinking about this, I glanced at the trash can where I had thrown the cake away. It was just as I had left it, untouched. On a whim, I decided to take a picture of it. When I called my parents and told them the whole story, my father said he would come to pick me up right away. I felt sorry for my newborn daughter. We had to move again. But for the both of us, it was better than staying here. My husband, who was supposed to be out for a meal, didn't return home as quickly as expected. My father arrived first. As my father was loading our belongings into his car, my husband and my mother-in-law finally came home. They seemed surprised to see my father there and got enraged when they saw him carrying my stuff. "Where are you going? Relying on your parents again, huh? You just run to your parents the moment something goes wrong." His words were harsher than usual. It seemed he had been drinking. His face was red and he smelled of alcohol. Seeing his state, I lost my temper. "You went drinking after leaving us, your wife and your newborn daughter at home? Right now, I don't want to be in the same space as you two. That's why I decided to rely on my parents." Then, my mother-in-law, who also smelled of alcohol, interjected. "Scary, good riddance, a daughter-in-law like you." Her comments always got on my nerves. "Indeed, as you wish, I'll take my daughter and go, so please enjoy your time alone with my husband, Daniel." When I said this, my husband made a confused face, but I ignored him and got in my father's car. It seems like my father was trying to keep his emotions in check, not intervening. The next day, my husband contacted me. "Where are you? I was surprised when I woke up and found you gone." Oh right, I had forgotten because he doesn't usually drink, but he tends to forget things when he does. I sighed. "Don't you remember? You left your hungry wife and daughter at home to go out to eat with your mother, and then you came back drunk. After being treated and spoken to like that, I couldn't stay there anymore." While my husband sounded surprised and flustered, I could hear my mother-in-law in the background, and my anger from yesterday returned. "So your mother stayed over? I won't be going back to a home where such a rude person is staying." "What do you mean?" His voice lowered. "She might be your mother, but she's a stranger to me. I'm exhausted from childbirth and don't have the energy to be considerate of others. Who do you think was the cause of our infertility? It was because your mother kept visiting and stressing me out. Otherwise, there's no way I would have gotten pregnant so soon after we moved and she stopped visiting. I was relieved not to see your mother's face, but when I came back home with our daughter, your mother was there and I just can't stand this." Though I knew I was saying some hurtful things, with all the resentment I had been holding back, I couldn't stop myself. And then my husband shouted over the phone, "You're the worst. Come back right now and apologize to my mom." When he said that, it felt like time had stopped for a moment. The next words that came out of my mouth were, "What?" As if to mock him. I continued, "The reason why I'm here with our child is because of your mother's request." When I said this coldly, my husband let out a confused sound. What do you mean?" "Your mother didn't want our daughter. She's always been saying that, hasn't she? She wanted us to have a son. Well, I didn't know how serious she was, but I was sure when I saw that cake." "Cake?" "Didn't you see the chocolate plate?" "Huh?" "The chocolate plate on the cake, or did you not even look at the cake itself?" I had hit the nail on the head. The trash can where I threw out yesterday's cake was still empty. so it was probably still the way it was yesterday. With that in mind, I instructed my husband to go look in the kitchen trash can.
But there's nothing in here.
Did she get rid of the evidence in the middle of the night? Then why don't you ask your mother what was written on the chocolate plate and where she threw it away? Then I could hear their exchange on the other end of the phone. She was denying knowledge of any chocolate plate, suggesting that I was being delusional. She stubbornly refused to reveal where she discarded it. So, how will my husband respond?
She's saying she doesn't know anything about any plate.
Even my husband sounded a bit hesitant, a bit weak. Right, wouldn't it be awful if Daniel saw that plate? Even if it's a lot of trouble, you got rid of it before he saw it, right? To get rid of the evidence. I could hear my husband's voice darken. In the background, behind my confused husband, I heard my mother-in-law's voice. Why don't you hurry up and come home? Tell her to entertain me. She's a really useless daughter-in-law. At her words, my husband finally seemed to be attempting to rein in his mother. I'm going to hang up and send a text. Maybe you and your mother should read it together. Contact me again when you are ready to talk. After saying that and ending the call, I sent all the photos of the cake and plate to my husband. Within 30 minutes, my husband called back and said he would be heading over here right away. I stopped him. My father-in-law should be getting there soon. Stay there. With that, I hung up. In reality, my own father had been so enraged by my husband's behavior yesterday that he had contacted my in-laws. He had reported everything to my father-in-law. Unaware of this, my father-in-law had apologized profusely and said that he would go to my husband and have a talk. By evening, my husband and in-laws arrived at my parents' house. As soon as he arrived, my husband bowed deeply to me in apology. I don't know anything about what's been happening or what happened this time. I didn't know my mother said such things to Lauren. Looking at my seemingly repentant husband, I felt myself growing cold. Don't you think it's too late to say you didn't know? Didn't we have this conversation when we were living in our previous home? Despite that, you sided with your mother saying she just wanted to get close with me and did nothing to change her attitude towards me. At my words, my husband started to turn pale. Plus, you always said that your mom absolutely wanted us to have a son. What's that about? Are you always going to do whatever your mother says? Since you chose your mom over your wife, I guess you don't need me, do you? My husband turned pale and clung to me.
That's not it. I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to.
Then, what did you mean? At my retort, my husband was at a loss for words and fell silent, looking down. Just as I thought, Daniel, you chose your mom over your own wife and daughter. A mother obsessed with her eldest son and a mama's boy. I should have realized sooner. It's no wonder your sister left home early. With a sigh, my husband retorted,
I'm not some mama's boy. I care about you too.
Then, could you really sever all ties with your mother? I fired back. At that, he fell silent. When I sighed, my mother-in-law, who was brought here by my father-in-law, yelled out, How can you say such a thing? Daniel and I are mother and son. We can never sever our ties. His father tried to calm her down, but she just wouldn't stop. To be frank, I never really liked you. I wanted a younger wife for Daniel. Really? In that case, I'll sever ties with you right now. I have divorce papers ready. If we divorce, then you and I can be strangers. Hearing this, my husband's face turned pale as he looked at me. I don't want to maintain a relationship with someone who would write these nasty things on my cake plate. Saying this, I pulled out my phone and showed everyone the picture of the plate that read, Take your daughter and leave. Upon seeing this, his father, perhaps not having been fully informed, angrily shouted at his wife, turning blue in the face.
What you did to your own daughter, you did it again to our daughter-in-law?
I was shocked to hear this. Apparently, his mother had once served a birthday cake to her daughter with the words, I don't need a daughter written on it, leading to their estrangement. Just how much she must hate women. Perhaps she thought she could get more attention by excluding the women close to her. Indeed, her son Daniel was acting just as she expected. When I handed my husband the divorce papers, he started making excuses.
We just had a child. We shouldn't be getting a divorce. My mom just went a little too far this time. She was just jealous of you. Try to understand.
Is that what you came here to say? I thought for sure you were going to tell me you were severing ties with your mother and coming back home. I'm never returning to that house. Then my father-in-law, who had been silent and pale-faced, spoke up.
Daniel, sign the divorce papers. I'm done with this family. When I get home, I'm divorcing your mother too.
What? His mother spun around at these unexpected words.
I've thought about it a few times before, but I thought it was too late for a divorce and that I just needed to be patient. But now that I see you doing the same thing to another woman, I've reached my limit. Sign our divorce paper and leave our house.
Begrudgingly, my husband signed the divorce papers under his father's direction. As a consolation, I received around $10,000 from his father. At first, I declined, but I accepted gratefully when he assured me it would be deducted from his wife's assets. My ex-in-laws really did get divorced, and his mother seemed to rely on Daniel, but he refused to take her in, blaming her for his circumstance. Indeed, the family fell out. His mother, who hadn't worked since they got married, lost all the money she received as property division after investing it all in cryptocurrency, which someone had recommended to her as an easy way to make money. I received child support from Daniel every month, and now I'm raising our daughter with the help of my parents. I'm so happy to see our daughter growing up and doing great.
I'm Scarlett, a 37-year-old, childless, working housewife. Today is our 5th wedding anniversary, and also my husband Everett's birthday, who is the same age as me. Everett is a handsome salesman at a famous company and seems to be quite successful, but he often works late and entertains clients, so we don't see each other much. Our wedding was a simple weekday ceremony with family and a few friends, as we both had weekend jobs and struggled to find a common schedule. Everett strongly wanted it this way. So, for our anniversary and his birthday, I asked him to come home early. I took a half day off from work. I bought his favorite Wagyu steak, wine, and cake at a department store and set a stylish table. I waited for Everett to come home. However, despite my insistence on coming home early, he didn't return. I received a single email saying he had urgent work and would stay at the office. Disappointed, but understanding it was work, I cleaned up the dinner and went to bed, feeling a little doubtful since he had said he wasn't that busy. The next morning, I went to work as usual, and my messages to his phone went unread. No response to my calls either. Worried, I called his office and was shocked to learn he had resigned the day before and apparently found a job in a neighboring prefecture. I hadn't heard a word about this. I rushed home and saw his shoes at the entrance. I burst into his room to find him packing his belongings in a suitcase. "What's going on?" In my surprise, I opened my eyes wide and asked him that. And he said, "What, you already found out?" while clicking his tongue and handing over the divorce papers. "What's going on?" With cold eyes, he repeated my question and said, "Let's get a divorce." "Why? What for?" "I'm fed up with you not fulfilling your role as a wife. You prioritize work, don't cook, do laundry once a week, and the room is dusty. I don't need a wife like that." "Wait a minute. For the past 2 years, I made dinner and waited. But you always said you had eaten and didn't eat it. That's why I stopped cooking." "Still, it's a wife's duty to cook and wait. Besides, your cooking is terrible, so I started eating out." At the beginning of our marriage, he used to say my cooking was great. I shuddered at his cold voice and argued that we had agreed when we got married that I would do the laundry and cleaning on my days off, Wednesdays and Thursdays. But he just rolled his eyes and said, "So, I should put up with a dirty room from Friday to Tuesday? That's a joke." "What happened to you all of a sudden?" "I never thought you wouldn't quit your job even after 5 years of marriage. When I got a job offer, I thought it was a good opportunity." "A good opportunity to divorce?" Everett never complained about my work or housekeeping, and there was no sign of him wanting a divorce. "Well, you never noticed how dissatisfied I was. I don't need a wife like that. I rented an apartment near my new job, so I won't be coming back to this room." With that, he pushed me aside, standing in front of the door, and left the house with his suitcase. I stood there dumbfounded, unable to comprehend what had happened. A week later, I attended a high school reunion. I wasn't in the mood to go, but I had already paid the membership fee, and I hadn't been able to contact Everett since then. I was feeling frustrated every day, so I thought it might be a good change of pace. When I went, there were divorced and single mothers among my classmates, and everyone was living strong lives. Until then, I had only hoped for an improvement in my relationship with Everett. But when I thought about it, if we reconciled, I would have to follow him to his new job location. If that were the case, It would be impossible to stay at my current job considering the daily commute, even though it's just in the neighboring prefecture. On the other hand, after working for 17 years since graduating from junior college and receiving a decent salary, it would be almost impossible to earn the same income in the new location. Everett had completely rejected me, and I began to think maybe I should give up. What made it definitive was a phone call from Everett urging me to move. We had been living in a rented apartment, and Everett was the tenant. The lease renewal period was approaching, and it seemed the real estate agent had contacted Everett. "I told them we'd move out in a month, so get rid of everything by then." "I'm still living here, and you didn't consult me at all," I complained, to which he replied, "I'm the one renting it. I don't need to consult you," in a combative tone. I realized that it was really hopeless and said, "Fine, I'll clean up my stuff this weekend or next weekend. Get rid of not just your stuff, but also everything left in my room and the furniture." "What?" I was ticked off when I heard that. "What are you talking about? This room was originally rented by you when you were single, and most of the furniture has been used since then. Most of the other furniture and appliances were bought with your credit card. I'll dispose of the furniture and appliances I mainly used, but naturally, you're responsible for disposing of the rest and covering the disposal costs." When I replied, he hung up. What a stingy man, taking only his precious belongings and leaving all the cleanup to me. This made me determined to divorce him. Over the weekend, I sorted out the closet, reminiscing about the happy times we'd had since we got married. There were many things belonging to both me and Everett. Among them, I found his high school graduation album. Come to think of it, all the friends Everett introduced me to were from after college. I absent-mindedly flipped through his graduation album. That's when I noticed something unexpected. I submitted the divorce papers and reported it to Everett by email. A week later, in the evening, I received a reply from Everett with a picture, which was a marriage registration form for him and a woman. I was astonished and stared at it when he called me. "Did you see it?" "What does this mean?" "It's exactly what it looks like. I just had a wedding ceremony and remarried that woman." "You're kidding." "She's super beautiful, rich, and has a great personality. She asked me to marry her as soon as we divorced. This is proof. Isn't it amazing?" "So you were cheating on me while we were married?" "I'm popular, unlike you, who only has your job going for you. Oh, by the way, her father built us a house on their property, and I transferred to her hometown with his help. It's a mid-sized company, but I'm an executive." Everett must have really wanted to brag about remarrying his rich affair partner, but as he nonchalantly answered, a strong anger rose within me. He said there was a problem with me and divorced me, but it was actually to remarry his affair partner. He said they had been dating for over 2 years. They met at a pub with his coworkers, and she was one of 4 women sitting at the next table. Apparently, when Everett spilled his drink on his clothes, she wiped it off, and that's how they started talking. "Man, she's the same age as you and me, but she's super beautiful and looks like she's 10 years younger. She quickly wiped my clothes with a pretty handkerchief." According to Everett, when he took her to a restaurant to thank her, he learned she was a landowner's daughter. She had an arranged marriage at her parents' suggestion, but was troubled by her husband's infidelity. After saying, "I need to fix my bad parts, she's totally different from you," I was instantly attracted to her, he said, and then aggressively pursued her. She started dating Everett without divorcing her husband. Isn't it normal to question the woman who dates 2 men while trying to be devoted to her husband? But Everett, blinded by love, didn't notice. "A woman who doesn't support her man is no good. You prioritize work and don't care about your husband. You're not right for me." "Huh? You can't stand on your own, so you want me to support you?" I couldn't help but yell at him, and Everett seemed annoyed as well, saying, I'm so glad I'm finally free from a woman like you. Stella is the best after all." "Stella? Is that her name?" "Yeah, it's written with the characters for double and flower, like the double cherry blossoms. She was born when the double cherry blossoms were in full bloom. Her parents have a great naming sense. They are true celebrities." As I listened to Everett's voice, enchanted with her unique name, I remembered something. Did you really marry such a wonderful woman? You're not lying? Pretending to say this, Everett's pride was hurt. She's the best wife with a great family background and personality. Look at her elegant beauty. As I expected, he sent me a picture of the two of them at their wedding. Ah, no doubt, it's her. I couldn't help but burst out laughing. What's so funny? This is proof that we really got married. Uh-huh, sure, it's real. I can't help but laugh, unable to say anything more. Hey, stop laughing. We really got married, and there's a baby in her belly. What? No way. I can't stop laughing. Ah, I get it. Losing me must have made you go crazy. Everett interprets my laughter in a way that benefits him and says dreamily, in 3 months, we'll have a baby girl. She'll definitely be as beautiful as Stella. Well, even if she looks like you instead, she'll still be beautiful. Everett has a sweet, idol-like handsome face. For some reason, he gets a little flustered and says, no, she doesn't need to look like me. Hearing that, I burst out laughing again. Everett says, go crazy on your own, goodbye, and hangs up the phone. Eventually, he'll find out why I was laughing. I can't wait for that day. Afterward, we had some disputes over alimony and property division, but I managed to get millions of dollars from Everett through a lawyer. Everett agreed to pay alimony for his share, not wanting to cause her emotional distress during her pregnancy. 2 years passed without any contact, and then I finally received a heartbreaking email. Please, Scarlett, I beg you, please listen to me. Reluctantly, I answered the phone call that came right after the email. As expected, it was about the child born between him and Stella. Well, kids tend to look like their parents, right? Of course! Who else would they look like? Yeah. Apparently, the baby girl doesn't look like the beautiful Stella at all. I tried saying, she's only 2 years old, right? She'll change a lot as she grows. But he couldn't be convinced, thinking it's strange that there's no resemblance at all. Well, I guess that makes sense. When I asked, holding back laughter, doesn't baby look like you? He suddenly panicked and said loudly, no, she doesn't. But it's okay. It's okay that she doesn't look like me. He secretly did a DNA test to check for Stella's infidelity, but the results confirmed that both Everett and Stella were undoubtedly the child's parents. So there's no doubt that she's your child. Everett wouldn't let the conversation end there. Hey, when I told you 2 years ago that Stella was pregnant, you laughed a lot. Do you know something? Wow, he remembered that. Well, yeah. Actually, Stella and I went to the same high school and were in the same grade. We were never in the same class during those 3 years, so I didn't know much about her, but I remember her being the daughter of a landlord and having a haughty, bad personality. At a class reunion about 2 years ago, the topic of Stella and her plastic surgery came up. Stella, with her single eyelids, small eyes, button nose, and slight overbite, was self-conscious about her looks and apparently underwent several procedures at a famous cosmetic surgery clinic in New York after high school. She didn't attend the reunion, so I couldn't see her face, but a friend later sent me before and after pictures of her. American cosmetic surgery is amazing. When I told Everett about this, he didn't believe me at first, but then realized that he'd never seen any childhood or graduation album photos of her. Was I deceived? Damn it! Stella acted all meek while we were dating, but it turns out she cheated on me multiple times and got divorced. She's been sued for alimony by several of her ex-husband's wives. I'm going to confront her. Maybe you shouldn't. Huh? Why not? Well, the child doesn't look like you either, right? Usually, girls are said to resemble their fathers. When I said that, Everett was at a loss for words. She can't look like you. You've had plastic surgery too. How did you? When I moved out of the apartment we lived in 2 years ago, I found your high school graduation album. You looked like a completely different person, so I was shocked. After seeing that album, I understood why he never introduced me to his college friends, insisted on having a modest wedding, and only invited a few colleagues from work. Everett probably had plastic surgery while he was in college and was afraid of being exposed by his friends at the time. I don't think there's anything wrong with plastic surgery, but you have to consider that your child might look like your original face. What should I do? What do you mean, what should you do? Just be a normal father. The results showed that the child is definitely yours. With that, I hung up the phone and blocked his number and email address. He's such a narrow-minded man, just because the child's face isn't what he wanted. A year later, a friend with a child the same age as Everett's showed me a picture of her child entering kindergarten, and the child was adorable. The child simply didn't resemble the current Stella or Everett. But according to my friend who became friends with Stella, Stella also expected her child to look like Everett after his surgery. My friend has to listen to her complain almost daily, saying I shouldn't have given birth to such a child. Seriously, they're the worst couple ever. And it seems Everett cheated again, so my friend even got divorce advice from Stella. Everett is such an idiot. If he ends up divorcing Stella, he'll have to pay alimony and child support. Plus, since Stella is a rich lady, there's no telling how much money she could get if she hires a skilled lawyer. Furthermore, according to my friend who became friends with Stella, even the local kids know about her plastic surgery, and her daughter is being excluded at kindergarten, being told, "Your mom is actually ugly." It's a relief that Stella's parents seem to love their granddaughter, but it's really sad for the child. Well, it's none of my business anyway. As for me, I managed to rent an apartment in a convenient location for commuting. Now that the distance is shorter, I can do cleaning and laundry after I get home, and I can spend my days off entirely on my own interests. I've deepened my friendship with a divorced classmate, whom I met again at the reunion, and I'm enjoying a leisurely and fun life.